Campfire Story.
For almost 2 years, I searched for a new home. 2 years. The student room where I used to live was almost the size of a closet. The living condition was awful. Mold on the ceiling, cold showers, crumbling walls, and a madwoman as a neighbor who was doing the weirdest things at night. Sadly enough, the housing market is so bad. It's very hard for someone to find a new place without any income. After trying hard and being as polite as I could be, I finally found an apartment. It was located on the ground floor and even had a small yard. You cannot imagine what a relief it was to leave the horrible small closet for a livable place. As soon as I had the keys to the door, I moved in, working hard to make it as nice a home as any could feel like. I was of course very proud of my achievement and wanted to show everyone what kind of incredible home I had. Almost all day I was speaking to people on FaceTime. I showed them everything: the kitchen, the living room, the giant empty place my TV was going to be, the yard, and my beautiful bedroom. I called everyone, and of course, I called one of my dearest friends. That's when the mood of my new living place started to change. Finally, I reached you. "How are you doing?" I asked him through the phone as I looked at his tired eyes. "Yeah, sorry, man. I had to work the long shift again. The boss was at work and he was a real pain in the ass," he said while he sat down on his couch. "Oh, that's sad to hear, but now you are free, right?" I asked him. "Yes, Billy is a free elf," he said jokingly, "but only for 10 hours. Then I have to go back. So show me your apartment quickly before I doze off. I'm very curious if it's better than my apartment," he said, laughing. I walked with my phone on the same route I was walking all day long. I showed him in detail the kitchen, my bedroom, made him jealous of the beautiful new couch I had, and told him how I wanted to decorate my wall. "It looks amazing, man," he said with a smile, "but of course not better than my apartment." I laughed and looked at the time on my phone. It was really late and I was getting tired. So I decided to start ending the conversation and go to my bed. "Thank you for taking the time as I showed you around," I said politely. "Hey, no problem, man. It was really fun, especially the weird doll outside your bedroom window. I almost shit my pants when I noticed it," he said, laughing. But I wasn't laughing. There wasn't a doll outside my bedroom window, and especially not a doll looking into my bedroom. "Haha, you're joking, right?" I asked him, a little bit concerned. "No, man, not at all," he said convincingly. "Nice joke, man, but how did you make his large eyes follow you around?" I immediately went to my bedroom and looked outside the window. Nothing was to be seen except for darkness and my reflection in the window. I opened the flashlight on my phone and took a better look at the yard. Again, nothing. "You are joking, right?" I asked him again, hoping he would tell me this was all of a strange joke trying to make me scared in my new home. "No, man, I don't joke like that," he said seriously. "I want Ted," Bill answered while shaking. "Bill, you're breaking up," I said while seeing my phone pixelated. The phone froze as I saw his scared face fixating on something. I tried to call him again, but nobody answered. He probably went to sleep, as did I. I laid down in my bed, knowing that in 10 seconds I would be sleeping. But somewhere back in my mind I was afraid that the weird thing with large eyes was looking at me through the large window into my bedroom. That night, I hadn't much sleep. I was tormented with nightmares, seeing the large eyes of a strange being watching me over and over again while I was wandering a strange and unknown dark place. I eventually saw someone in my dream. It was a strange man who I had never seen before. He looked distressed, as if something was haunting him. "Don't follow," he whispered. I didn't know what it meant. I wanted to ask him, but a loud noise interfered with my strange dream. I then heard it again, this time much closer, as if it was standing right next to me. I opened my eyes as sweat dripped from my forehead. I knew the sound came from my room and not from my dream. I turned on the lights and looked if anything was strange. The only thing I saw was that the door to a small closet was open. I went to it and looked, nothing but worthless stuff. I closed it and went back to sleep. I had closed my eyes for just a few seconds and heard the sound again, this time louder and more persisting. I turned on the lights and saw that the closet door was open. I knew I had closeted it. I double-checked it even, so something had opened it. At that moment, I knew something was wrong. I looked around in my apartment, searching for something or someone I actually didn't want to find. Eventually, I just stopped looking. There was nobody but me in my apartment. I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. The fear of something wandering in my room made me paranoid and scared. So I stayed up all night, and as the sun came back, making the birds whistle and my room bright, I felt defeated, knowing that day was already upon me and sleeping wouldn't be an option anymore. The next couple of days became just like the first one. Nothing really happened during the day, but at night I would be haunted by strange sounds, noises, and shims in the dark. I still couldn't sleep, only during the day when I had a little time to myself. It became really exhausting. Each night was worse than the last. Something was there. I knew it. I felt it. I had swept the closet multiple times trying to find any hidden room or some evidence of somebody living there. But I didn't find anything. I tried calling my friend who saw the strange thing in the window, but he didn't pick up. I asked the neighbors about it, but they all kept their mouths shut, not saying anything other than that I was imagining it, or that it was old building noises. They had easy talking. Apparently, I was the only one having these issues. I grew very frustrated with all these things. I had gained large bags under my eyes and didn't enjoy anything about my new home. Each night I hoped to sleep nicely, but each time something disturbed me. I had enough. I decided just to ignore it. Yet the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. Eventually, I saw literally something creeping out of my closet and looking at me for a few seconds. I immediately turned on the lights, but it fled back, closing the door of the closet very loud. At first, there was at least something nice happening. My new TV arrived. A big, giant, massive television where I could watch countless series and movies for hours. Something I really needed, something I desperately craved. It would be a kind of stress relief, a way for me to at least enjoy my new home for a bit. I hooked up all the wires, made a few adjustments so it would fit nicely in the living room, and I was off, sitting on the couch with lots of tasty snacks and beverages, watching whatever I could watch. Eventually, I stopped switching channels and stayed on a nature channel. Something about a soft and smooth voice explaining why a cheetah is hunting a gazelle makes me always calm. I looked at for hours, not noticing that the door to my living room was slightly open. I never left a door open. I always closed every door for some reason. So that this door was slightly open was something strange to notice. I went on to close it, this time pushing against the door hard so I knew it would open by itself. I went back to sitting on my beautiful couch and watched the nature program. It was at that point I knew that I would be sleeping on the couch, while the smooth voices of all those narrators would keep me asleep. But then I noticed the door slightly open again. Much to my annoyance, I went to the door and looked in the hall. Nothing. I closed the door, this time moving a small table in front of it so it wouldn't open anymore. I went, again, back to the couch and watched my nature show in peace. I watched it for hours, still keeping one eye on the door, who was nicely shut. The tiredness of all the other days in my new house had finally got up to me, and I began to show all the symptoms of being very sleepy. The voice of the narrator made me feel like I was drifting on a cloud, knowing that any moment my eyes would shut and I would be in a deep sleep. It all felt so warm and kind until I was pulled out of it by a dreadful and most fearing sound coming from the door. The small table against the door started to move and make an awful screeching sound. It was being pushed by the door that was being opened. I looked in horror while it happened. Nobody could be in. All the doors were shut, all the windows closed. Nothing could be in the house or I would have heard it. The door stopped as it was just slightly open. A dark shadow figure stood in front of it as I saw two large eyes with dark pupils watching me from my door. I looked at it in horror. It just stood there in the doorway, watching me. It didn't speak. It didn't move. It just watched me. For half a minute, I couldn't move. I was frozen to my seat watching the thing. I finally grabbed the remote that was laying next to me. As the large-eyed thing still watched me, I stood up, ready to throw the remote at the being. It watched everything I did while still not doing anything. I stood up as his hateful eyes followed me. I lifted the remote and threw it as hard as I could towards the dark shadow. The thing closed the door as the remote came towards it. It made a terrible and awful sound as it ran away to my bedroom. "You should not have done that," it screamed in a very hurtful and hoarse way. I saw it as my chance to get out of my house and away from that horrible thing. I ran down the street, not even bothering to close my door. I heard some yelling behind me, but there was no change in hell that I would stop and look. I just kept going and going. until I finally reached someplace that was a bit crowded. It wasn't the best people one could be around, but it were people nonetheless. It felt safer than being home alone with that thing. I wandered around a bit, staying close to some folks who looked very suspicious at me. I couldn't care. I wanted some time to think without being stalked. Eventually, most of the people went away. I wouldn't blame them. It was very late and they, just as I, were very tired. Knowing that at one point I had to sleep and not wanting to stay outside, I went to a 24/7 hotel. It was an old and tiny hotel with a withered old and tiny lady sitting at the counter. I checked in and went to my room. The room was surprisingly nice and clean, something I didn't expect. My body wanted to sleep right away. It was tired and devastated from all these long and horrible days at my new home. My mind, on the other hand, went full paranoia. I think I looked 100 times out of the window, expecting that strange thing looking at me from the street. Eventually, my mind felt the hard torment of not sleeping well. So I checked the window one last time, seeing nothing but the dark, empty streets, and went to bed. I didn't even bother to take my clothes off. I just laid there on the bed, and in seconds I was off to dreamland. This time my dream was amazing, like floating on a cloud made of goodness and niceties. I could feel my body rest, enjoying what seemed to be the best time of my life, living the dream everybody should be dreaming. I slept like a log, dreaming about puppies and kittens all playing with each other and having a great time. Sadly, a faint sound that seemed rather off entered my dream and made me lose my attention to the kittens and puppies. Again, the faint sound was heard, now realizing it came from outside my dream. I opened my eyes, being very disoriented and adjusting to the pitch blackness of my room. I turned on the light next to my bed, fearing the worst possible outcome. The light was fell and blinded me for a few seconds, making it hard to see what was in my room. My heart started to pound out of my chest, knowing that somewhere back in my mind I would see that horrible face of that horrible monster. I could finally see clearly, and nothing. My room was empty. I stood up and looked outside. The sun was already shining its first few lights of the day. I realized the noise came from the room next to me. Apparently, the person there had a rough night. I got into my bed again and closed my eyes. It was again in seconds that I slept, but this time I didn't dream so well. I felt the horrible feeling I had all those nights at my new home. I felt like being watched. Then another sound barged into my dream. It was the sound of somebody running on a wooden floor very loudly. I couldn't quite make clear what it was or why it happened, but it was again coming from outside my dream. I woke up again, looming at the pitch blackness of my room. I turned on the light to see if something was there. I looked around, and there it was, in my room at the door. It was looking at me with its big, large eyes and dark pupils, its face full of hate and anger, just watching me. I froze. I couldn't move a muscle. I wanted to scream, but only a faint, soft sound of despair came from my mouth. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The thing just watched me, until it suddenly came sprinting towards me in the most horrifying way possible, as if all his bones were broken in one leg, but he still kept moving. For some reason, without me fully knowing how, I picked up the phone next to my bed, and in a quick reflex, I punched the thing right in its face, startling it enough for me to make a run for. I ran downstairs to the receptionist, seeing a lifeless body at the desk. The old, withered, tiny lady sat there with pale eyes looking at me, but I knew she wasn't alive. I couldn't linger too long looking at the old lady, for I heard the loud screeching and agonizing sound of the strange thing coming down the stairs towards me. I didn't hesitate and ran out of the hotel onto the streets, only to be greeted by big yellow lights coming at a fast speed towards me. For a few moments, I blacked out until I awoke on the cold and wet street. I saw the thing coming out of the hotel and walking towards me very slowly. I didn't know what happened next, for I passed out, feeling the weight and tiredness hold a grip on me and pushing me to the darkness of the mind. The next few hours were vague to me. I kept waking up and going back into unconsciousness. I remember that I was dragged into a hospital room, but then blacked out again. A few moments later, I woke up with a nurse by my bedside. She gave me a nice smile and said that everything would be fine. The room where I was looked nice and cozy, with a nice warm bed and even a big nice television in front of me. I couldn't stay awake for too long and crept back into darkness, feeling very tired and lifeless. The last thing I saw was the nice nurse, now with a not so nice smile on her face, but more sadistic grin, looking at me with hateful eyes. The nice and cozy room didn't seem so nice either, but more abandoned and pale. "Go to sleep," said the nurse in a distorted way. I felt hopeless, hoping this would be a bad dream. Yet I fell into the darkness until a small light shined through my eyes and woke me up. Now I could clearly see that this was not a hospital room. I woke up feeling a bit rested, but my body was bruised and hurt. I looked around, seeing the gray and green mold on the walls. The television had a crack in it, and the room was filled with a stench so awful it opened your nose immediately and gave you tears in your eyes. I stepped out of bed, not seeing anyone or anything around me. My muscles were hurting as I walked out of my room and into a long and poorly lit hall. There was nobody. It was all abandoned. It seemed like it was once a hospital, but nobody has been here for ages. I screamed a few times for help, but no answer. I walked around a bit. The lights on the ceiling were on, but most of those flickered, making it harder for me to see. Eventually, I found a small broken sign that said exit. I went in that direction, knowing full well something was terribly wrong with the place. I walked in long, dark halls, feeling disorientated with not seeing any window or sign showing me I was going the right way. The rooms in the hospital were beginning to look darker and darker. More and more light started to flicker, and some even died. It was like a maze. Each staircase brought me to a long, poorly lit hall with no end in sight. Each door felt like a push to a darker place. I finally caved in and just sat on the cold, hard floor. That when I saw something move. At the end of the hallway, there was a strange appearance entering the hall I was in. It seemed as if it was in a hurry of some sort, walking towards me like it was being followed by something. As it came closer, I saw it was dragging one of its legs on the floor, as if he couldn't use it at all. I stood up, feeling a terrible sensation going through my body as the thing came closer to me. "Who are you?" I shouted. It didn't answer. "Are you all right?" I asked him, as he slowly but steadily approached me. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the lights that flickered, but when he was almost a few feet away from him, I knew I was in big trouble. It was the strange thing that watched me and followed me. His large, hateful eyes were fixed on me while he came closer towards me. I could see his smile. It was so disturbing, as if he was so happy and excited for doing something horrible to me. I turned around and ran as fast as I could. It was slow because of all the injuries and bruises, but I was faster than it. I ran through the halls, hoping to find an exit, but nothing. I searched and searched, but it was still like a maze. I felt lost and hopeless. Each time I turned around, there it would be, the strange thing following me with his horrible eyes watching me. As I felt all hope sink and my body caved almost into itself, I opened a door going to a large and dark space. This wasn't like any other place, for it felt free and nice. I didn't see the thing behind me anymore as I walked the weird place. At the end of it, I saw the sweet lights of daylight coming from a door. I could hear cars and birds whistle. I felt the last bit of strength flowing in me as I started a sprint going to the exit, feeling the wind and smelling the fresh air of nature filling my lungs. I almost reached it until a dark, twisted hand grabbed me by my neck and pulled me into the darkness. I felt nothing but fear, seeing the daylight growing thinner as everything went to black. You are now probably wondering how I did escape this, how I came free from the horrible claws of darkness. Well, he didn't. You see, I've been called a trickster, a joker, a cheater. I play unfair, unkindly, not by anyone's rules. I am the thing watching you right now, in the dark. If you search for me, well, you shall find me. If you feel watched while nobody is alone, then you are not alone. At some point, you will have to turn off the light, and then it will be just you and me. It is now only getting easier knowing that you know I exist. I hope you'll have sweet dreams, for when the sun goes down and your lights go out, I will be waiting, watching, hoping that you will find me. Subscribe or I will haunt your house. If you like this video, please do comment, like and subscribe for more. Thanks for hearing. See you in the next one.